Hey, vinyl community. Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records. I thought I'd give you an update on my adventures with servicing, maintaining, and repairing dual turntables, my favorite vintage turntables. I've done a couple so far, so this will be my third in that series. But I was experiencing a problem with one after I had it running really well, and it would get to the last couple of minutes of a side of a record, and suddenly it would no longer be tracking correctly. It would start skipping, and sometimes it would track all the way through. And when it got to the lead out groove, which would then cause it to move toward the label and then pick up and return, it would stick there, and you'd hear popping sounds. Tried a lot of different things, realigned, made sure my cartridge was tracking correctly. Tried different cartridges, different styluses, see if it was there. I did get some improvement with a lighter cartridge, but problems still persisted to one degree or another. Took it back out and opened it up, flipped it over, and tried a few other things some people suggested. I'm going to show you what I did. I'm not sure what exactly fixed it because I did several things and tried, and now it's working correctly. This is not that particular dual turntable. This is actually 1229. I will talk to you about it in a minute. But I've got the 1219 that was giving me that problem repaired somehow. But got lots of suggestions from different people, and there's an O-ring right here. Let's see where I am here. The tone arm is right on the other side here. There's an O-ring right here that adjusts, because these are multi-track or single-track players, and this O-ring will get hard, and somebody suggested changing it out. Well, I didn't have anything to change it out with, but I used some rubber renew and cleaned that up. Now, that doesn't really sound like what it ought to have been, but I tried to cover all my bases. So I did that, put rubber renew on it. That may or may not have helped. Eventually I may have to totally take that off and put a new O-ring there. There's a pimple or a nipple right down here. It's a German word, and the last part of the word is pimple. And it's just basically looks like a little cream cover, cover for a cap for a little cream or some ointment or something that sits right here that grips this lever for the return back and forth. Check that. That's in good shape. So it wasn't that. So I went back, and all my pivot points here, I applied some lubricant on all of those, even though I'd already done that again. And then I re-greased the cam. I cleaned the cam out, and maybe I didn't grease it enough the first time, but I re-greased it, and so that it would move more smoothly. I did those things, flipped it back over, and it started working correctly. Now it does do one thing, because I've got it up and running in the other room. I do get a pop when I turn it on, when the tone arm moves over to the record, and then when it sets down, I get a pop. And I think that is the capacitor. As the capacitors get old, it's a sparking pop to keep in the power switch, to keep it from surging. And that spark pop is what I saw it referred to as. That may be what that is. So on that other model, I may need to go in and do what I had to do to this one. Now, this is the 1229 that I bought as a project from eBay, and I had it thought up and running very well, but then suddenly the motor started running continuously. It wouldn't shut down. Now, it's not that the platter continued to spin. That wasn't the issue. The issue was the actual motor wouldn't stop running, and it's got a strobe, spectrostrobe right here. That's the underside of it for you to check the speed control. Make sure the rotations per minute are correct. According to the manual, it may well be that capacitor. Now I just put a new capacitor on here, right here. I learned how to desolder first and solder, and then solder. And as you can see, I've move this out of the way. I've soldered this according to the manual. There's not a positive or negative, so you couldn't get that wrong. But I got that done on this one. But look at what was on there. Now, this is the original that came with it. Let's see, what is it? A 10NF 250 volt. That's what's standard on those. But whoever had this before had rigged this thing up, and it had like a resistor. See, there's a resistor right there, that little multicolored thing, and a couple other, they're like phonos. Somebody said they're like phono capacitors, and they had this circulating around here. And someone advised me, they said somebody has Frankensteined that thing. For what reason, who knows. They suggested take it all out and start over, and that's what I've done. Now this capacitor is a square one. It's the little aqua green or green looking thing over to the right, and it's square, not a tube like this is. But as long as it will fit back on here, it doesn't really matter. So that's what I've done so far. Never soldered before. Soldered, that doesn't sound quite right. Soldered before now. Learning as I go. But I think, they say don't get too much on there. But I had a little trouble on this side. You had to stretch it to get it just right to get it on there. But I hopefully haven't done too much. Got too much on there, and it will hold. Now I'll have to put the cap back on. I keep all my parts I take off in a cup like this or something so that I don't lose them. Somebody also suggested getting a magnetic tray. I think that's a good idea. Maybe next time I'm in the auto parts store, I'll pick up one of those. And so, soldering gun right here, got it turned off and everything. Learned how to tin it. Learned how to clean it and re-tin it. I've used this I used it to desolder to get these off, and then how to come back, clean it, come back, re-tin it, and I just got through putting that on. Okay, so now this motor was making a lot of noise. So this may or may not. The manual said this was the problem, that it was the capacitor had gone bad, and that was why it wouldn't shut off. But it was making a whole lot of noise. So it wasn't before this problem existed though. So I'm gonna put the cover back on here. Here's the only thing. I got too close with the soldering gun and almost melted through my wiring cover casing here, but it didn't go all the way through, so I think I'm okay. But I'm gonna flip it over. Meanwhile, I checked everything, and I think I'm good as far as my lubricants on here and everything like that. You can see it got a lot of grease on the cam. Maybe too much, but better too much than not enough. But when I get it turned over, if it does work correctly and turns on and off, then hallelujah. But I may find that this motor needs to be taken apart and re-greased. The bearings in there re-greased because it was making a whole lot of noise. Now you can find these online on eBay or somewhere. It looks like for around $40, 30 or 40 bucks. Hopefully don't have to replace it. Hopefully there's at least one video, I'm probably more, of taking these things apart and cleaning them up and putting them back together. So it'll be my next challenge. But anyway, so this is the 1229. So I've got the 1219 fixed, as I said, except I may have to come back, and I bought two capacitors. So I've got one more here. Bought two because you know I could have very easily screwed this up and needed to try over, a do-over. But so I've got two, so I can come back, and if I get this one up and running good, I'll put this one in the living room and use it for my listening, and I'll take that one back out, flip it back over like I've got this one flipped over, take the cover off, and replace the capacitor and see if that gets out of that spark pop, that sparking issue. Anybody knows more about this than me, which is most of you are, I'm learning as I go, as we say. Please feel free to comment. Tell me what I did wrong if you see something obvious or not obvious. And hopefully this will help someone else that's trying to figure out what's wrong with their dual turntable. Every bit of information we can put out there to help others, great. I've gotten a lot of help from a lot of people in figuring out how to do all this. All right, well, it'll be the first test. Put a record on. Now I've put everything back, turned it right side up, secured it into plinth again, put the platter back on, and I've recalibrated the tone arm. I can't remember. I had to go get from another dual over here, another 1219 and 1229 are interchangeable cartridges and sleds and everything. I get the cartridge and sled off that 1219, and this is a Shure V15 Phase 2 that is fully functioning, working well. I do have, I'm getting a new stylus for it based on recommendations some people gave me. The JICO, I believe it is, JICO, from LA Tunes, I believe it is. I'm waiting on that to come in, but this stylus is fine. I thought I would change it out though. But anyway, I've put that on, so I had to rebalance my tone arm, and I couldn't remember exactly what my tracking force is supposed to be on here. Set it for 1.5. I think it's 1 to 2, but I'll have to look it up again. It's all those numbers keep running together in my head. But I set it and I balanced. I checked it with a scale on here. Set the needle down on the scale and had to. These things aren't precise, So it was on 1.5, but it was giving me like 1.66. So I backed off a little bit, got it to 1.4. Grams and left it there. I figured out that's probably about right, and I reset my anti-skid. So now, if I haven't messed anything up, it should play without any problem. The question, of course, is will it stop playing? Will the motor stop running and the strobe stop turning and lighting up when it's playing? So let's when it's through playing. So let's see what happens. So it appears to be working correctly. I didn't hear the motor running. Now, the good thing is we're not hearing the motor running now while it's running. So that means I'm not going to have to take it apart and relubricate it and put it back together, which I'm sure I'll have to tackle eventually, but it's nice not to have to tackle that one. The strobe works fine, no issues there. I'm gonna move the needle over to the last part of the last track and let it automatically return, and again see if it turns it off or if the motor continues to run. But the good sign is the strobe light went off when the record stopped playing and went back down into the shut-off mode. So if that's shutting off, that means the motor should be shutting off as well. So evidently it was this capacitor. So you learn something new every day. And, how do you keep your brain from turning to mush? It's not by sitting around in an easy chair at home watching news, 24-hour news, and yelling at the TV. It's from trying something new, something you had never done before. And it'll keep that brain sharp, I hope. Keep me out of the memory ward in 10 or 20 years from now, hopefully. Okay, let's see if it goes back. It goes off the lead-off track all the way to the label. It moves back over. It doesn't move real fast because remember, all this is gears and mechanisms. It's not electronic. It sets right back down. And we do have the hum from the speaker, but as best I can tell, the motor is not running. That hum will go away when the record starts. And so there's probably a short. I probably need to, there's no ground wire on this. It's an internal grounding. So maybe I need to do an external grounding and see if that takes care. But it's not enough to bother me. Motor's over here, and I don't hear it running. So, another day, something else learned. And maybe this will help somebody else who's working on turntable trying to figure out just what the heck is going on. So I'll move this over. First I'm going to check, make sure my tracking is within the range. And then I want to move this over and give it some time in the living room system to make sure that it's not creating, the problem's not going to return. But you see the strobe light is off, so I know that part of the motor's turned off. Okay, everybody, remember, be kind to your neighbors because we're all neighbors.